Actually, it's interesting. Sounds rather sort of bizarre, but I did go to Diana's coffin the day after I'd written it.
The innocence about her, you just thought, wow, this girl is not.
There are moments in history that pause the world. The death of Princess Diana on August 31st, 1997, was one of them. But nearly 3 decades later, the story refuses to stay buried. Charles Spencer, Diana's younger brother and the man who stood at that Westminster Abbey podium and delivered words that shook the monarchy to its core, has continued to speak. And what he has revealed over the years is not just painful. It is a portrait of a woman who was failed repeatedly by the institution she married into, the media that hunted her, and a system that never truly understood her. This is his silence, finally broken. And it changes everything. To understand what Charles Spencer has revealed, you first have to understand who he is in Diana's story. He was not a peripheral figure. He was her younger brother, the boy who grew up at Althorpe alongside her, who watched her transform from a shy, warm-hearted girl into the most photographed woman on the planet. He knew her before the cameras found her. He knew her when she was simply Diana, not a princess, not an icon, just his sister. That closeness gave Spencer something rare, an unfiltered view of what Diana's life inside the royal family truly looked like. Not the version polished for public consumption, not the carefully managed image released through palace press offices, the real version. The version that kept her awake at night. The version that left her crying on the phone to her brother, telling him she felt trapped, that no one was listening, that she was profoundly alone inside one of the most powerful institutions in the world. Spencer has said in multiple interviews over the years that Diana reached out to him in deep distress during her marriage. She told him how isolated she felt, how the warmth she naturally carried with her was treated as a problem rather than a gift within the rigid walls of royal life. She was expected to smile, follow protocol, and suppress everything that made her human. And when her marriage to Prince Charles collapsed, rather than being supported, she was pushed further to the margins. One of the most consistent themes in everything Spencer has shied is this: Diana was never truly accepted. She arrived as a 19-year-old girl, full of life and completely unprepared for what awaited her. The royal family, by Spencer's account, never made room for who she actually was. They wanted someone who would fit the mold. Diana broke it, not out of defiance, but simply by being herself. Spencer has been direct in stating that the palace knew Diana was being relentlessly pursued by the press. The paparazzi followed her everywhere. They camped outside her home, chased her car, and turned her daily life into something resembling a siege. And yet, despite having every resource available to them, the royal family provided her with no meaningful protection after her divorce. She was no longer a working royal, and so, in the coldest institutional logic, she was no longer their responsibility. Spencer found this unconscionable. She was still the mother of the future King of England. She was still one of the most recognizable human beings alive. The argument that she was simply beyond their concern once the divorce was finalized was, in his view, a moral failure dressed up as procedure. He has never forgiven it. In his telling, Diana spent her final years running, from cameras, from attention, from a life she had not chosen, and no one with the power to help her chose to do so. That running, as Spencer has noted with quiet devastation, finally caught up with her in a tunnel in Paris. Spencer has spoken about the night Diana died with a clarity that still carries grief in every word. He was in South Africa when the first call came. A voice, calm and measured, told him Diana had been in a serious accident in Paris. She was injured. Details were limited. Spencer sat with that information, his mind moving through the implications, the press, the chase, the relentless pursuit that had defined her life. He waited. The second call came not long after. The voice was different this time. Colder. The words were simple and final. She had not survived. In the hours that followed, Spencer had to hold his grief privately while the rest of the world was still learning the news. The public chaos had not yet begun. The flowers had not yet started piling up outside Kensington Palace. The world had not yet stopped. But for Charles Spencer, everything had already changed forever. Of everything Spencer has disclosed over the years, perhaps nothing carries more emotional weight than his account of the battle over William and Harry walking behind their mother's coffin during the funeral procession. The image is one that history will never forget. 2 young boys, 15 and 12 years old, their faces pale and composed, walking behind the coffin of their mother through the streets of London while the world watched and wept. It appeared, to many, as an act of dignified courage. What most people did not know was that one person had fought fiercely to prevent it entirely. Spencer has recounted how he learned of the plan through a conversation with a palace official who mentioned it as though it were already settled. His response was immediate. This was wrong. These were children in the earliest hours of grief, and the proposal was to place them in front of billions of watching eyes, every expression scrutinized, every stumble recorded. He refused to accept it. He argued that Diana would never have wanted this for her sons. She was, above all else, a devoted mother. Exposing her grieving children to the world's gaze as a ceremonial gesture would have horrified her. The response from the palace was firm. The decision had been made. Spencer pushed back. He demanded reconsideration. He was then told that William and Harry themselves wanted to walk. That information, Spencer has said, stopped him. If the boys had chosen this, then his role was not to override their wishes. He stepped aside. Years later, Prince Harry revealed the truth. They had not been given a choice. They had been told what to do. As a 12-year-old boy still trying to understand that his mother was gone, Harry had simply followed orders. Spencer, who had believed he was respecting their decision, later understood that he had been deliberately misled, and that in stepping aside, he had unknowingly allowed something he would never have permitted had he known the reality. He has never stopped calling it wrong. When Charles Spencer stepped to the podium inside Westminster Abbey on September 6, 1997, he carried something with him that few people in that building had ever brought to a royal occasion: unfiltered truth. His eulogy was not the carefully worded tribute of a grieving family member reading from a prepared statement vetted by palace advisors. It was something else entirely. He called Diana the most hunted person of the modern age. He spoke of the media's role in her death without softening the language. And then he turned his words toward the royal family in a way that was unmistakable to everyone listening. He promised that Diana's blood family, the Spencers, not the Windsors, would protect and guide William and Harry. He spoke of ensuring they would be raised with the imaginative and loving approach Diana herself had championed. It was, in effect, a public declaration that the royal family had failed his sister, and a warning that he would not allow them to fail her sons. The Queen sat expressionless. The senior royals showed no reaction. But outside the Abbey, on the streets of London where the sound was being broadcast, people applauded. Inside the Abbey itself, the applause began and spread. It was extraordinary, spontaneous clapping at a royal funeral, for a speech that had just openly challenged the institution hosting it. Spencer had said what millions had been feeling but had no platform to express. And the world heard him. Spencer has since been honest about the aftermath of that promise. He made it from a place of genuine conviction, but he made it without fully accounting for how deeply embedded William and Harry already were within the royal system. They lived within it. They were educated within it. Their futures were mapped by it. There was no mechanism by which Spencer could simply remove them from that orbit and raise them as his sister might have wished. The monarchy held their lives in its structure, and there was nothing he could do to change that. The promise, powerful as it was in the moment, remained largely symbolic. Spencer has acknowledged this without self-pity but with the quiet weight of someone who understands the gap between intention and reality. What Spencer has made clear across decades of interviews and reflections is that Diana's story did not end in that tunnel in Paris. It continued in her sons, particularly in Harry, who carried his mother's instincts, her warmth, her discomfort with the institution, her deep need to connect with ordinary people, and eventually reached a point where he made a decision his mother never had the chance to make. In 2020, Harry and his wife Meghan stepped back from their roles as senior royals and moved abroad. It was the kind of break from the institution that Diana had spent her final years slowly, painfully attempting. Harry completed it, and Spencer, without making dramatic public statements about it, appeared to understand precisely why. Diana spent years feeling like she was fighting a system alone. She was. Spencer watched it happen and could do little to change it. Harry, decades later, looked at his own life and saw the same walls closing in. He left, and in leaving, he did what his mother never could. Charles Spencer has spent nearly 30 years carrying the truth of who Diana was, not the icon, not the legend, but the real woman who cried on the phone to her brother and said she felt completely alone. He has refused to let that truth be smoothed over by time or sentiment or institutional convenience. He has spoken when speaking was uncomfortable. He has named what he witnessed without dressing it in diplomatic language. Diana deserved better. Spencer has said it in every way a person can say something. And the world, listening closely, knows he is right.